So this presentation is just called, so I've got an idea, now what? And the reason for that is that we're trying to frame this to kind of fit whatever size event or program you're trying to think of. So you really want to start off thinking about, this event that you're trying to pull off. Does it match the mission and vision of your organization? So here, the kind of example I'm working with is, let's say your organization is to serve the homeless community in the greater Lafayette area. Which one makes more sense? To host a petting zoo to raise money for another um, organization in the greater Lafayette community that works with homeless people, or to directly connect with that organization, maybe do a service or project with a group of people who already serves that community. One of them aligns a lot more directly, and it's easier not only for your members to see the purpose of why they're dedicating their time and possibly money to this event, while the other one is a little bit harder and not so much of a straight line on how to get there. So when you're thinking about the type of events you want to produce, you really want to start thinking about what is the mission and the vision of my organization, and does this event align with that? Next one that we had a little sneak peek of is scaling the event. So not every student organization on campus is going to be able to bring Beyonce to campus, right? We barely have an auditorium that, or even Elliot's too small to really fit the crowd that Beyonce would bring. So when you're thinking about what kind of event that you want to have, you really need to think about what your organization is capable of doing. So do you have the resources? Do you have the membership to be able to put on an event like that? So for example, dance marathon, that literally takes hundreds of volunteers to put on. So if you're trying to put on an event like dance marathon, but it's only your exec board who has maybe 10 members on it, is that something realistically that you all can do? At least by yourselves, right? So we'll talk about a little bit about collaboration later on. Do you have the volunteers? Do you have the time? So a lot of organizations have these big, grand, beautiful ideas, but don't realize that those kind of ideas take time to be planned. So concerts, for example, they can take, like, we have to have an activity planning form in at least 90 days in advance. And that isn't even like include the planning of it. The planning should start far more in advance beyond that. So really thinking about the time commitment that it's truly going to take, not just the day of, but leading up to it. The money, does your organization have the ability to, one, get money to bring someone to campus or put on this event that requires you to rent or a bunch of stuff, or can you acquire that money anywhere else, or do you already have it in your account? And then the risk, is your organization willing to accept the risk of putting on certain events? So obviously concerts come with really big risk associated with it just because of the amount of people that it brings. But also if you're working with minors, that's a really big risk too, right? Because you're putting that minor, the responsibility of taking that minor into the hands of your organization. So there's just a lot of levels that you really have to think about before you just go on and decide that you want to put on this big event. So just really kind of thinking, how can we bring this down to scale if needed to fit what our organization is capable of? So funding the event. How can you get money for your organization to use towards this event? So I think the first thought is usually fundraising, like, oh, we'll just fundraise and get these ideas or get this money. So it really depends on what kind of event you're trying to do. So maybe you just need to buy supplies for this event. You have the manpower, you have the location that's free, all these other things that you can do. So really you just need maybe $50 to $100 to buy material. Great, so then a skip a meal might work for that. And going up from there, if you need a few $100s, that might be something you look towards landmark or levy. So Landmark or Levy are the two companies that take care of the security, the ticketing, and the concession booths at all Purdue's large events. And when we get back to our normal, they do hire student organizations to volunteer. Well, not volunteer because you actually get paid for it. So to come and serve as those concession stands people, to scan tickets, all that kind of fun stuff at these events. And then they will pay, I think Landmark specifically pays $10 per student per hour. So if you get 10 members out there for 1 hour to volunteer, you already have $100. So it's something that's really easy and simple to do and get money pretty quickly. Then there's PDOG, which is the Purdue Day of Giving. And that's a really great way to access the people who have money, right? So a lot of the time, we are asking students to donate. And students don't have money. Like, I didn't have money as a student, right? You're already paying for a bunch of other things. The last thing you want to do is spend money donating to an organization, maybe when you've already paid dues. And it's either pay for this fundraiser or, order a large pizza on a weekend. So we want to stop kind of targeting students so much for their money and instead go to the people who have money, right? The people who have graduated, have those jobs with those incomes, and that can donate back to your organization. So thinking about alumni, thinking about community partners, community members who might have some sort of investment in your organization. Additionally, if your organization signs up for Purdue Day of Giving, there are certain challenges that they can participate in that they will get, they'll win a certain amount of money or a percentage of this or that if they complete these different challenges. So all really kind of cool opportunities to be able to get money that way. Then we have two different grants, and so there's SFAB and SOGA, and those both come from the Purdue student government. So the way that I like to describe them is that SFAB is SOGA's bigger brother. So that means they both come from the same family, but SFAB will cover any event that is $15,000 or more, and SOGA will cover anything that is $14,999 or less. So that being said, they both do have applications. So with SOGA, that application is available 4 times a year and for different funding periods. So the way that one works is that you want to base when you're going to apply to it on when you want to have your event. So the first thing you would want to do is have a general idea of when you want to have your event. And then you would look at the different SOGA funding periods and find the funding period that includes the date you want to have your event, and it'll tell you which application you need to apply for and when those deadlines occur. So with that one, that again happens 4 times a year. And so we just closed the application for the 4th funding period, which means the one for the 1st funding period of the 2020-2021 school year is opening. And then SFAB is a 1 time a year application. So this application opens during the spring. So the early spring might open up the end of the fall semester, but applications are usually due by the end of January or early February. And that one is, again, for any event, $15,000 or more. And that includes an application, a budget, and then a presentation. So you do have to do a presentation on what your event is, the goals, the purpose, how it serves the community, all that kind of stuff. And that application is only once a year. So the reason for that is that it goes towards the next academic year. So we did already have SFAB applications open and close for the 2021 school year, but this one does require you to plan ahead a little bit more. So if you're looking to try to fund something for the following year after that, this is something you can look at. So both of those are listed as organizations on BoilerLink. So you can go on there and they have all the details and guidelines about how to apply, what you can apply for, what isn't, and what will and what won't the grant cover. And then the last piece that we'll talk about is partnering. So another great way to get funding, but also people to help with your event is to partner. So PSUB, that's the Purdue Student Union Board, that is a great resource. to partner with to try to get your event, again, a lot more volunteers, but also money towards hosting that event. So they have an application that comes out, I believe it's around November, but those details again are on their Boilerline page. And they have applications for their co-sponsorships. And they're only one organization you can co-sponsor with. So other organizations include any of the 1,000 we have out there, as well as those larger umbrella organizations like the different councils for fraternity, sorority life, and fraternity, sorority, and cooperative life. You can also partner with cultural centers. That's also a really great resource because they're always looking on how to expand their reach across campus, and as well as colleges. So specifically, if your organization aligns itself with a specific college or major, that's a really great way to go and try to get some more money, especially towards the end of those fiscal years. People are definitely trying to make sure that they're spending their money. And an idea too is to look at your membership. So maybe your organization doesn't align specifically with a college, but maybe your membership does. So kind of looking at your members, seeing who they know, who they're close to, the professors, etc., who can help you get connected to the money that colleges hold. All right, so moving on to location, there's things to consider with your location, right? Is it a cost? Is there a cost? So with that cost, also thinking about cancellation fees, which is unfortunately something that we have to give extra consideration to right now. But you really want to think about the cost of that location. Does it make sense? Are they charging you too much for what you're trying to get out of the event? Do you really have the feasibility to spend that much on a specific place? Locality. So does it make sense where you're hosting this? So let's say you're trying to host an event that targets undergraduate first year students. Does it make sense to hold something all the way out on the border of Lafayette? Maybe not, right? Maybe you want to keep things closer to campus because data shows that most undergraduate first year students probably don't have a car or have no way of getting all the way over there. So really thinking strategically about where you're hosting your event. Does it fit the need? So if you are trying to host an award banquet, does it make sense to host it at the community pool, right? Really thinking about, maybe it does if you're the swim club, right? But really thinking about like, does it fit your needs? Does it have all the pieces that you need? So a lot of the time, if you're having like catering, that's going to be plating dinners, they have to have a stage kitchen to serve and get all that kind of fixed on place so they can serve. So really thinking about that, talking to the different entities that will be using that space and making sure that it fits their needs as well. Bathrooms. So believe it or not, there's a calculation out there that tells you how many bathrooms you need for your space, depending on the amount of people you have and the length of your event. And that is a calculation that risk management knows. But you really kind of want to think that, especially when you think about the population of the people who you're going to be bringing. So I'm thinking specifically minors. So little kids, more than anything, typically have to go to the bathroom a lot more frequently. So do you have access to that bathroom? If you're hosting your event in the Armory that only has, like, I think they only have a few bathrooms or even any, you have to rent porta potties. And that's part of the agreement if you're going to have an event in the Armory because they don't have enough bathrooms to hold enough people. So really kind of those silly things, just really thinking about that. And then maybe securing a rain location. So if your event is being held outside, do you have an alternative location that can fit, or for the most part fit, your event indoors? And are there fees associated with that? Is it included in your contract with your original location? Really just kind of thinking about those things. Moving on to logistics, think about your event. What supplies do you need? Are you going to have to rent tables? Are tables included with your space? Is setup included with your space? Because sometimes it's not. Sometimes tables are provided, but they're just going to deliver them in a stack and you have to set them up. Think about decorations, which I didn't list on there, but it's also really good. Decorations, if you have any, supplies, are you doing food? Who's in charge of cleanup, right? If your event is really long and at the end you still have to clean up, do you have a group of people who are willing to stay back and volunteer to do that? Or to get there early to set everything up? All these kind of logistical things you really want to start sinking your teeth into. So there is a lot of these out there. So this is just an example of one. You can kind of find one or create one that fits the need of your event. But this is just a checklist. So you're thinking about obviously like your when, where, and hows, but also what kind of things you need, who are you trying to target, and there's a bunch of other ones. I think this was actually the only the first page of this checklist, but it's just an example of one, and it's something to really get into the habit of creating, so that you know as you're planning events out in the future, as you should be, you know which things you've taken care of and which ones you haven't. So marketing. So once you have a general idea of how, where, when, you can start marketing your event, right? So to start off with some free ones, you have BoilerLink. So as a student organization, you're required to submit activity and planning forms for any event that you're hosting on campus. There are small exceptions to the ones you don't have to submit for, but for the most part, you're going to have to submit one for all events. And with this, once your event is approved, it's automatically placed on the events list on BoilerLink. But your flyer also gets posted to the TVs in the Craft Leadership Center and in the Union and in Stewart. So it's kind of like a cool added bonus. If you didn't know that, that is what happens. So it's always good to develop a flyer and upload it with your event. Chalking. So the general rule for chalking across campus is that it has to be on an outdoor area that is open to the elements. So that means don't chalk under awnings, don't chalk on walls, don't chalk on, I don't know, people get in trouble for like just chalking under places that don't actually, or like indoor concrete areas, that don't actually have exposure to the elements. And the fun part about chalk is that if it doesn't wash away, your organization's name is on it. So make sure that you're chalking in the areas that you're supposed to be allowed to. Posting flyers. So with creating that, you can create flyers easily on Canva. It's a really great free tool that's out there if you don't already know about it. It's just canva.com. And then ITAP, so every student organization has $10 printing credits with ITAP. There's more information on ITAP's website if you just Google ITAP student organizations. That pops up that tells you about that. But you can print for free, and then you can take those flyers and post them around campus. The rule with that is that you can post them on the different bulletin boards that are across campus. If you're not sure if you're allowed to post on that specific bulletin board, just check with the building deputy or a front desk somewhere and they'll be able to tell you. And then last but not least, social media. You all know it. You all love it. For the most part, we all know how to use it. So just that's a really great idea to practice marketing your events and getting them out there with some fun flyers that can really catch the eye and the mission and vision of your event. So turnout. When we talk about turnout, we talk about how are you getting people there? You have this great idea, you've put so much work into it, you've marketed the heck out of it, and you get to the event. How are you making sure that people show up? Right? Your flyer can only draw so many people in. People get distracted, people don't put it in their calendars. So what are you doing? Are you creating some sort of buy-in? Is it, if you come to this, you get this. The first X amount of people that come receive this. What is the buy-in for your event? Use your personal connections, right? So if you have a roommate, you have your friends, you have people who you're in different group chats with, ask them to come and ask them to bring one friend. Your members, right? Set expectations with your members. So tell your members that they have to come with one person, one additional person, or at least try to, right? Or maybe they have to reach out to 5 friends. and provide the kind of proof that they did that or something. Or with your execs, make sure that they know that they need to be there. And that goes for members too. A lot of organizations have requirements for members to show up at events. And if they don't, you can create those, right? Make sure that they know that the work that went in to do this and that they should be there. Alternatives. So if it is a type of event where you're doing some community service project and you needed at least 10 people to sign up, and you did get those 10 people, create a list of alternative, right? Things happen. And so you might plan for 10, but only get 8 or 7 that week, that day. And that means that you all can't complete the service project that you did. So make sure you have alternatives that you can call up and say, hey, so-and-so didn't show up, we need you to be here, and that they can get there. And then the last piece is follow up, right? Don't just go and ask your friend once, like, hey, can you come to this event? Do that once, and then maybe like the day before the event or a couple days before, be like, hey, so you said you were going to come to this. You're still going, right? That follow up a lot of the time means a lot. Or just sending out a text and be like, hey, I'm so excited to see you tomorrow. Haven't seen you in a while. Can't wait to catch up, right? Loop them in, create that follow up. And then when you get to the event, make sure you say hi to the people you invited, right? They shouldn't have just been a prop. You definitely want to follow up with them at the actual event. And then I included this link from Eventbrite that had I think there were 7 different ways on how to increase turnout. So it's a really kind of cool link that you can look at, and this PowerPoint will be available later as well. And then run of show. This is a great little tool that I like to use, especially as your events that you're planning get larger and larger. So a run of show essentially is a timeline for your organization or for your event. So in that, I like to include the time that things are supposed to happen, what the task, so what is supposed to be happening at that time, what supplies do you need during that time, and then who is your main contact person for that time. And this is something that can be distributed to all your members who are working on the planning of this event, any volunteers that are supposed to be there that day of. It really becomes a really handy tool to know what is supposed to be going on when. And you can make this as broad as you want or as specific as you want. I've had one that it had every single little thing on there because, a lot of the times we think we have things under wraps until we get to the day of, and then we forget the pens and we have nothing to sign people in with, right? So you definitely want to, I always find it easiest to just brain dump and make sure I have every last thing on there. And then that everything is ready to go, and that we have people who are in charge of it. Because realistically, the one person shouldn't be in charge of everything the entire day, because that would be exhausting depending on how long your event is. And then the very last piece is assessment, right? So especially this is an event that you all want to do again later on, or maybe it was just a new type of event that you wanted to see what how your members liked it. Think about assessment. What did we do well, and what can we do better? So with the participation feedback, get them before they leave. That is the best way to get someone's actual opinion on what they thought of the event. So maybe you have members posted by the exit doors who are handing out just quick little surveys, or get creative with it, right? Maybe you have a Instagram poll or something that people can fill out right before they leave. This way, you're getting their honest feedback right at the end of your event, and you have that so you don't have to worry about sending out a survey later on. And then make it interactive. That's always fun. So again, talking to people straightforward or coming up with a creative way. And then if it comes down to it, you can send a survey later on. And then it's also important to assess your team. So whoever participated in planning that event, you should assess them too. So especially while it's still fresh, while we still remember like, wow, I remember that it was awful having to unfold all those chairs by myself that day. We should really have at least 2 or 3 people doing that task. those kind of details that are going to be forgotten once the event gets one old enough or two people just kind of start to zone out, especially if it's your one big event of the year. The changes don't have to happen right away, but you should commit to making them. And that's why it's important to have this assessment earlier rather than later, and then to write them down and make sure that they go to whoever is in charge of this next. Because otherwise, you're just putting on the same kind of event that you would be putting on at any other point in the year. All right. So with that, we just want to share that SAO is still here to help. We are still available via email and via phone during our regular business hours, which are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern.